Fought it for a couple hours. Thought I was going crazy. All right, here's our donor motor. We finally got all the EGR cooler, EGR setup off of it. It's laying down here. Let's see, EGR cooler and EGR fuel cooler warmer. Not sure what they call it. Is all one piece, no fuel filter. We got the new one. We'll get the fuel filter assembly up there, and the EGR lines and valves that are off the 04 we'll put on this one. But first, I'm gonna finish pulling the harness off and driver's side turbo, because I'm gonna swap both turbos. I'm just gonna go with it and then pull the turbo off. I gotta make some brackets. I had a chain break on me on my engine hoist, so I bought some tougher chain and some grade 8 bolts, and I just need to make a little bracket to mount on that bracket on the side of the engine. Get up on hoist, pull the engine mounts off, pull the turbo off, and finish getting the harness off. Once we get this harness off, we'll put the harness off, get the harness off the old one and get it onto this one, because there's some differences between 04 and 06. Mainly, I'd say EGR. This EGR on the 04 was just vacuum operated, no solenoids. 06, it's got complete solenoids, controllers, and electrical connectors, along with where the fuel filter mounts. So this one, fuel connections come right off the back firewall. You can see it right there, one of the blue lines, then a black line. And they tie right into the back of the motor where the fuel filter setup is. That won't work with the 06, because there's actually this fuel rail. Came up this driver's side, a valve cover in front of the PCV filter vent, and then came out here, and this is where your fuel lines would connect on an 06. So gotta just update that. The lower fuel lines look the same. They're kind of coming up to the fuel rails here. I did disconnect both of these to get the EGR cooler out. It was just easier to get my wrench in there, put them back on. So yeah, it's coming. So far, everything's looking good. I'm gonna make some brackets, get it back up on the hoist, nice and safe, and get things continued. All right, so I got the chain set up. That's my new chain. It's got like a 3,000 or 2,600 pound working strength. I got shackles. I made some quick little angle iron brackets, and some 3/8 bolts. Tighten down, so should be plenty of strength. I didn't cut my chain. I'm just gonna leave extra, just so this will be my engine transmission hoist chain. Stays with my hoist. Won't use it for anything else. I'm not gonna adjust it for the engine. Just take the cotter pin out, move the hook where I need it. So tomorrow I gotta get ready for work, so it's gonna be for today, so it's ready to lift tomorrow. I'll pull this other turbo off, pull the catalytic converter off. Actually, no. Yeah, I'll pull the catalytic converter off. I'm gonna drain the oil out and then fill it with some new, since it's out. All right. And then we got the engine harness off the donor car. So it's the 06 harness. Went in and pulled the rubber or insulating pad off the bottom of the oil pan, and got the other turbo, driver's side turbo off. You can see that. So the one difference is our exhaust manifolds on the 06 have oxygen sensors right before the turbo, and the 04 doesn't. So either swap manifolds or plug those holes. Here's the harness. This starts from the back. These two, you can see this goes back on the back of the pumps. And right, we got the donor engine out of the 06 Touareg hoisted up. I got the 04 wiring harness kind of draped over top. I'm going to swap out the exhaust manifolds. I got the 04s right there. And I'm gonna take these off. That way I don't have to worry about plugging that port. And when I put the 06 back together, it'll have everything intact. Went ahead and removed the guard. I think there's 2 Torx screws on the top, 3 number 10 bolts, and 1 little Torx bit right here. So once you get that off, that's a number 13. Is it number 13? Let's see here. Number 12, I'm sorry. It's number 12. I soaked them in WD-40. So hopefully we don't have anything break. But we'll get these off, and then we'll throw on the new one, or the 04 one, and do the same thing to the other side. And we'll start putting the harness all on. So after we started, got ready to put our fuel filter housing on the donor engine, we realized there's a few more things that are different. Coolant lines, fuel lines, of course. Big one's coolant. The one going back for the EGR cooler we don't need. So, and actually the manifolds are different. So there's bolt points here and here on the 06 that we need, that we don't need on the 04. And I want to be able to put this engine back to the 06 compliance. So we ended up pulling the oil filter housing off, and then removed both intake manifolds. We also pulled the water piping off the front, because that's different. And then, so this is the water piping here. This will go on our donor engine. I already pulled it off that one. And then Kian's working on pulling the intake manifolds off. So it's a snug fit, but it's not too bad. We'll get those pulled off and then just compare everything after from that point. And hopefully we can start assembling this motor. So we had a little oil spill down here. Engine got tilted a little bit too far back when I set it on the tire, and it drained out of the oil, or the turbo oil drains. But we do, as we're doing this, we're checking the harness, and we did find some damaged wires. So we're gonna clean up some of the connectors. If any of them are, there's a few of them that have the broken tabs on them, so I'm zip tying those up so there's no way for them to come off. And then any damaged wire or bare wire, we're gonna clean up and protect and repair. So it's taking a little longer than we were hoping, but it's coming. All the connectors, electrical harness is installed on the front and down by the motor mounts. So I got the crankshaft position sensor plugged in. We got the new manifolds swapped over. Starter's not bolted up because we need to install a tranny before we can do that. And so we'll get intake manifolds swapped out, put the cooler lines on the front, coolant lines, and then finish the harness. And then we'll install the oil fuel filter setup and go from there. All right, back at it. Okay, so we got next morning. It's supposed to snow today, rain and snow, so it'll be interesting. But we got both engines, got the intake manifold removed from both engines this morning. I just double checked the connections, so they all line up with the harness. There's no extra other connections I need to worry about. So I think the next thing we're gonna do is install the correct intake manifolds and then plumb the cooling pipes and fuel. Yeah, because we got this line that goes to the alternator to cool it, but it should have another line coming back for the fuel cooler. So that's what we got to make sure we get installed, is all the right plumbing. We'll figure out if I need to get the intake manifolds on first or get the plumbing on. I'm thinking intake manifolds first because those are the tightest to get down into those intake manifold bolts. So go ahead and get this. This would be the driver's side intake manifold on, then I'll do the passenger, and then we'll start piecing it all together. Let's get to work. Well, just as I thought I'd figured it all out, we got the one intake, we got the intake manifolds on, then we got this pipe that goes from the front back to the heater core, because this is different. The way the one on the other engine actually goes underneath the engine, and this one goes off to the side, which makes it a little easier off the back, I guess. But one thing I did notice is this. If you can see down there, that connection, there's a water connection hose for the alternator. This hose, this hose, and then the piece coming out of the back here, it tees off. So the original one doesn't tee off. It just goes straight into the alternator, but this we need here for the oil cooler, or the fuel cooler ties in right here, where on the other one, the fuel cooler, I think, is further back. I don't know. Either way, I had to take the piece coming off the back of the alternator. This is a T, so that should work. Had to modify the hose a little bit, put a new hose clamp on, so now we can button this fuel cooler and fuel filter all assembly, put it together. Then we'll put the oil filter housing on. We do have one more crossover pipe to put through, I think, before we put it on, which is this one here. But we'll get it. It's going a little slower. Just want to make sure I'm not missing something, so we have to tear it back apart after I get it in the car. So, all right, let's continue. All right, a little update here. I didn't realize my camera battery went dead, but I got this pipe installed. I got to put these 2 screws in it, and then I got this pipe to go to the fuel cooler. This will be, and then goes down to the alternator, and then through the oil cooler, I believe. But I think we're good on all the pipes now. I did install the one on the front, so this one goes over top of this one, so I had to get that one on there and get the other one on there. So everything on the front is just about done. I'll get the oil cooler on there, then I can lay my harness over top of that, or my oil filter housing, actually, I think is what I'm going to do next. I'll clean up that area, get the oil filter housing on, then the fuel filter housing. Okay, so I'm ready to put the fuel assembly in. I did end up moving these to from here back to here. That with the EGR setup, it was reversed. So hopefully everything connects up, and we'll try to get this engine transing back together, and then sitting on the subframe by the end of the day is my hope. I mean, if I can get further, that's even better. See if we can get it running tomorrow. So right now, I got my transmission transfer case on my smaller engine hoist, and I'm gonna meet it up with the engine, which is on my big engine hoist. Ideally, if I had a gantry crane, this would make a lot of this a lot easier, especially when we get ready to set this on the subframe. So, you can't bolt up the starter, put the turbos on, put the motor mount on until I get the transmission bolted up. So that's what we're doing now. All right, let's get going. Okay, so this is the 2004 transmission. And we're just gonna try to measure close as we can. Micrometer doesn't quite fit in there, but that's what we're getting. That's 0.846, 0.5, so almost 8.5, 0.85, sorry, 0.846, 0.5. And this is the transmission 2004. And what I was trying to do is install the torque converter from the 2006 motor, and I could not get it to make that third slide onto it. It was protruding about a quarter of an inch from the housing, bell housing, and I just fought it for a couple hours. Thought I was going crazy. Then I looked up online to see if I could find part numbers. couldn't really find any part numbers on the torque converter or difference saying that they are different between 04 and 06. So I said, well, let me take this torque converter, the 2006 one, and try it on the 2006 transmission. And if it slides right on, then most likely I got an issue. I know what my problem is. So I did that and it slid right on. So we'll go back outside. Again, this one's 0.846. Now we'll go outside and do the 06 transmission. Okay, and right away I can see that it's smaller. You put this on there and you can see it's smaller. So 0.8, what was it, 0.846? Let's see what it is on this one. Okay, it's about right there. So that's 0.68. So is it almost quarter inch? 0.2. So there's a quarter inch difference in shaft size. That's crazy. 0.67. So we'll just call it 0.68. The other one was 0.86. So, or 85. So almost quarter inch difference. So you can't interchange torque converters between an 04 Touareg and an 06. I'm thinking 04 and 05. And then when they went to DPF, must have done something different, but for sure 04 and 06 is different. So now I'm going to try to get this thing back together. Okay, so I got the right torque converter. It's the original 04 one. Going on the 04 transmission. Took some transmission fluid. After I cleaned this up, the shaft and the seal, took some transmission fluid, lubricated everything. Same with on the torque converter. Now we're going to carefully, it might leak a little bit because I kind of overfilled it. Slide it on there. There's 1, 2. We got one more click. There we go. So that's all the way in. There's still some play, but it's all the way in. We have 3 clicks. And one way you can confirm this is if you have a straight edge, if you don't get that last click, these flanges will be out here about 1/8 of an inch. So if you see, we got a good 1/4 inch gap there, thickness of the flex plate. So this torque converter is installed. I spent quite a bit of time yesterday trying to get that other torque converter to mount, and come to find out it's slightly different. This one has original Volkswagen label and part number on it. So I'm going to look it up. But alright, we're going to get this on the engine. So we got transmissional, all the torque converter bolts installed, all the transmission to engine bolts torqued down. Went ahead, since the bolts for the starter hold to the transmission, I went ahead and installed the starter. Still got to wire it up, but first we're going to install the starter main cable. There's 3 of these clamps, and this thing runs right along the bottom and then curves back, bottom of the engine, and then curves back to here. So we'll get that installed now. Then we'll reattach our harness, crankshaft position sensor, and then tidy it up. We should be able to put the motor mount in. And then we'll attach our cooler lines. Hopefully we'll be able to get ready to put it on the subframe. That's what I want to do, just so it's more safe. Right now we got it suspended by 2 engine hoists. And as we all know, hydraulics can be sketchy. So I don't have the kids in here working with me, mainly for that reason. So I just don't want to be worried about where they're at. Just got to worry about myself. So